In a sweeping, nearly 100-page indictment, former President Donald Trump, the leading candidate for the 2024 Republican nomination, was indicted today for trying to overturn his loss to Joe Biden in Georgia in the last election, a state Trump lost to Joe Biden by just under 12,000 votes.
Former President Donald Trump, along with 18 of his allies, the lawyers and all the cronies surrounding him, have been indicted in the state of Georgia over their efforts to overturn Trump's loss in that very state. Now, as expected, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is using racketeering charges, also known as RICO charges, of course, which is normally associated with mobsters, which is why RICO makes a lot of sense in this context. No, but seriously, it's to accuse Trump and his cronies of being part of a criminal enterprise to keep him in power. So let's go through the details of this indictment, now the fourth indictment against Donald Trump. The defendants include, of course, Donald Trump, but also White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who we haven't really heard much from in recent months. Trump attorney and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani is also one of the individuals named in the indictment. You have Trump administration Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark, who of course advanced the then president's efforts to undo his election loss in Georgia. You have lawyers John Eastman, Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesebro. And you also have Ellis, she's also named in this indictment. Now, the charging document accuses the former president, his former chief of staff, that's Mark Meadows, Trump's attorneys, and the ex-New York mayor, Rudy Giuliani, of being members of a criminal organization and enterprise that operated in Georgia and other states. The nearly 100-page indictment details dozens of acts by Trump or his allies to undo his defeat, including beseeching Georgia's Republican Secretary of State to find enough votes for him to win the battleground state, harassing an election worker who faced false claims of fraud, and attempting to persuade Georgia lawmakers to ignore the will of voters and appoint a new slate of electoral college electors favorable to Trump. So we'll go through all of those accusations one by one in just a moment. But first, why don't we go to the video of prosecutor Fani Willis giving a press conference to elaborate on this indictment just last night.
As you examine the indictment, you will see acts that are identified as overt acts and those that are identified as predicate acts, sometimes called acts of racketeering activity. Overt acts are not necessarily crimes under Georgia law in isolation, but are alleged to be acts taken in furtherance of the conspiracy. Many occurred in Georgia, and some occurred in other jurisdictions and are included because the grand jury believes they were part of the illegal effort to overturn the results of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. The acts identified as predicate acts or acts of racketeering activity are crimes that are alleged to have been committed in furtherance of the criminal enterprise.
So these were charges that we were expecting her to announce in the beginning of September. Obviously, we aren't there yet, but she apparently feels that she has strong enough a case to announce these charges and present the indictment a little earlier. And this is important, Cenk, because as we've talked about before, when it comes to federal charges, should Trump get elected, there is some chance that he'd be able to pardon himself. That's not the case when it comes to the state level indictment. So that includes the fraud in financial records. That's the case in New York that Alvin Bragg is presenting. And then here we have the Georgia case involving his meddling in the 2020 presidential election.
Yeah, so I want to explain. You're probably hearing RICO statute a lot, and obviously this is it's part of what they're charging here. So what does that mean? Well, all it means is, look, if you're working together with a number of people, two or more, towards a certain objective, and you're committing different crimes in service of that objective, then you're triggering the RICO statute. So there are parts of this indictment that right-wingers have reacted to in hilarious ways, where they explain like, here's what Trump did next, and here's what the other person did, et cetera, et cetera. and they're like, oh, they think it's criminal now to watch cable news or something. No, guys, they're just explaining the case, what happened, right? Not every part of the 98 pages is criminal. And people have made a good analogy here saying like, if you go to buy a ski mask, that's not illegal. But if you do it in service of a crime that you're going to commit with other people to rob a bank, okay, then they explain in the indictment that you got the ski mask in furtherance of that. Buying the ski mask is not the illegal part. The bank robbery is the illegal part. And if you had a number of people working together and they did several different acts to get to the bank robbery, then that, and some of those were illegal. They went and purchased an illegal gun, they stole a car, etc. That becomes then a good place to use a RICO statute to bring all those defendants through all those different crimes to the same objective. And in this case, the objective is stealing the election. And so she's doing something really interesting here, the opposite of what Jack Smith did. She's charging all 19 co-conspirators at the same time and trying them at the same time, whereas Jack Smith had 6 unindicted co-conspirators with Donald Trump, but he is trying Trump only, then moving on to the other guys. And it'll be really interesting to see which strategy is better from a legal perspective of how it comes out in the courtroom, right? Is the 19 co-defendants going to bog down that trial in Georgia? Is it going to take longer because of is it going to be a mess because of the 19 co-defendants, right? Is Jack Smith going to move faster? Or does the 19 co-defendants help because then Rudy, Mark Meadows, and all these other guys, and look, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows are interesting national characters. But there's in that 19, there's a whole bunch of rando little fish, okay? And none of them have morals. And like Sidney Powell, for example, has admitted, yeah, I was making this stuff up, right? And in other court cases. So is she gonna sit there and go, oh, I'll take the fall for the big guy? Or is she at some point gonna pull the chute? And remember, prosecutors always give the better deal to the guys who go first, right?
You might know the answer to this question. I'm not entirely sure. So would it be a defense for Donald Trump to essentially throw all these people around him under a bus and allege that he genuinely believed that the election was stolen from him as a result of the lies that were being told by the Sidney Powells, the John Eastmans, all of these people? Would that be a defense?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's why Fani Willis charging all 19 at the same time becomes even more interesting.
Absolutely.
Because it forces Trump to say, it wasn't me, it was them, okay? And then, well, what is Rudy and John Eastman and all those guys gonna do? The nationalists to go, no, it was him, right? And then we've got a really interesting scenario. Whereas in the Jack Smith case, they might want to avoid prosecution later, etc. But here we've got to have a completely different dynamic. Now, as to whether it's a defense to say, well, my lawyer said it was okay. First of all, definitely not a defense.
Not just that, but that, see, because I'm curious if there's going to be an effort by Donald Trump and his lawyers to allege that Trump genuinely thought that there was widespread voter fraud. Now, obviously you and I think that's ridiculous considering the fact that there were multiple recounts in the state of Georgia alone. There were dozens of court cases, more than 60 in which Trump lost, failed to prove that there was any, even a little shred of voter fraud. You have Trump appointed judges who ruled against him in those dozens of cases. So like, it's ridiculous to us, but I am curious, right? Like, because as I read the details, yes, Trump engaged in some behavior here, which we're gonna go through, but an argument could be made, right, that he engaged in this behavior because he genuinely thought that the election was stolen from him. And would that defense work?
No, absolutely not. So let me explain 2 different parts of it. First of all, that's why Jack Smith in the federal case about the same situation about stealing the election has presented all this evidence, or has all this evidence that we now have seen some of, which shows that no, Trump definitely knew. Okay, so that's why they want to knock out that possibility altogether, that it confuses the jury. So they have witnesses, documents, etc., showing that Trump knew that he had lost the election. Now, let's get beyond that and say that somehow they can't prove that, and Trump proves, oh, I really thought that I had won the election. Does that allow him to break into a voting machine in Georgia? No. Does that allow him to get fake electors to sign fake documents saying he won, even if he thought he won. No, you still can't get fake electors to commit fraud, etc. It doesn't matter how justified you think you are. Those are significant crimes.
So let's go through the accusations here. What Trump's part in all of this was in the various actions that were taken following the 2020 presidential election. And then we can discuss how strong the case is, okay? So I wanna start off with something that we've shown you and had you listen to many, many times, and that is the phone call that Donald Trump made. He called Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, and asked for something very specific. This is definitely part of the investigation and the case. Let's listen.
So look, all I wanna do is this. I just wanna find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Which is one more than we have. That last part I think is super relevant because he's like, listen, I just need you to find me enough votes to just beat Biden by one vote, right?
Yeah, look guys, I gotta say this. So MAGA muddies the waters with nonsense. Think about it if it happened to you, right? So if I thought I won the election, would I go and call the Georgia Secretary of State? In the beginning, I wouldn't personally call him, but I would ask for a recount, no question, nothing wrong with that. I'd ask for a hand recount, nothing wrong with that. Now, let's say that you got on the phone with him, it's already a bad idea, but okay, you're on the phone with him. What I would say to him is, look, brother, I think I won the election, but it's your job to determine that, right? So all I'm asking you to do is put in maximum effort to find all the correct votes. I would never say, find me enough votes to win, I need to win by one. That's saying, I don't care who won, and I don't want you to do your job of finding all the correct votes. See, if I was him, I would have emphasized to no end, don't worry about who won, just find out if there was fraud, if there was no fraud, an election stolen or not stolen, and who got more votes. But do not be shy about it and fight as hard as you can to find all the correct votes. If he had said that, there's no case at all. That's him just fighting to get the guy to count correctly. But he didn't say that. He said, find me 11,700, after he checked his nose, 780 votes, one more than I need. I mean, that's what I'm telling you guys. The most underrated thing about him is how unintelligent he is. He just handed a prosecutor a perfect piece of evidence for this case.
So there's more tied to that phone call and his interactions with Brad Raffensperger. The indictment also charges Trump with making false statements and writings for a series of claims he made to Raffensperger and other state election officials, including that up to 300,000 ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls in the 2020 election, and that more than 4,500 people voted who weren't on the registration list, and that a Fulton County election worker, we've talked about this before, her name is Ruby Freeman, was a professional vote scammer. One man by the name of Stephen Cliffgard Lee, was charged for allegedly traveling to Freeman's home with intent to influence her testimony. Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss testified to Congress last year about how Trump and his allies latched onto surveillance footage from November of 2020 to accuse both women of committing voter fraud, allegations that were quickly debunked yet spread widely across conservative media.
Of course.
So that part of the false statements to Brad Raffensperger, how much of that was Trump just hatching up nonsense? How much of it was the result of Trump's allies feeding him garbage and him buying into it because he didn't want to accept defeat? All of that will be worked out through this trial, right?
But we already know so much of the evidence is public, and there's evidence that Trump absolutely knew. And he wasn't like this innocent, gullible guy who's like, oh, golly, gee, I wonder who won. I can't tell at all. And then these evil Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell come in and go, oh, I'm your lawyer and I say you won. Donald, I'm gonna trick you into, come on, guys. You know how Donald Trump works. He's like, find me the votes. I don't care who won. Okay, I'm gonna win. And then he would get rid of every lawyer who told him, no, you didn't win. And when Pence said, you didn't win and I'm not gonna cheat on your behalf, according to his chief of staff, he didn't mind if Pence got murdered.
Mark Meadows, chief of staff. By the way, Mark Meadows is trying to move the Fulton County case, the indictment that we're talking about right now, to federal court. That just broke. There are no other details about it.
Yeah, well, remember what I said yesterday. I think Mark Meadows is going to testify against Donald Trump. I think he's working with the federal government. That's why he's trying to move it to federal court. And so he's the one guy that Jack Smith did not indict, when obviously he was the chief of staff and very much involved in all these machinations. So if he didn't get indicted, likely he's a cooperating witness. So that's why Meadows is basically saying to Willis in Georgia, no, you're not getting it. Ixnay on the indictment A. I'm working with Smith A. Okay.
All right, so let's get to
That's my speculation, by the way. That is not news yet.
Right, exactly. Literally, the story just broke, so we don't have any additional details on it at the moment. But I want to move on to some of the other accusations, because the phone call to Raffensperger is just one part of it. The other part of it that I think is worth doing a deeper dive into is the Coffee County voting machines. So Coffee County, a heavily Republican rural part of Georgia, overwhelmingly supportive of Donald Trump, which is why it's strange that Trump's allies decided to essentially breach the voting machines and illegally obtain voters' information. So I want to give you the details on that real quick. So the indictment also accuses Sidney Powell and several co-defendants of tampering with voting machines in Coffee County, Georgia, and stealing data belonging to Dominion voting systems. According to evidence made public by the Congressional Committee investigating the January 6th riot, Trump allies targeted Coffee County in search of evidence to back their theories of widespread voter fraud, allegedly copying data and software. And we do have video showing you what that scene looked like. Let's take a quick look at that.
The newly obtained surveillance video shows a Republican county official and a team of operatives working for Trump attorney Sidney Powell inside a restricted area of the local elections office in Coffee County, Georgia. Among those seen, Kathy Latham, a former GOP chairwoman of Coffee County, who is under criminal investigation for posing as a fake elector in 2020. Latham previously claimed she was not personally involved in the breach, but the video appears to undercut that claim, showing her inside as a team of Republican operatives work on computers near election equipment and proceed to access voting data. Scott Hall, an Atlanta bail bondsman and Fulton County Republican poll watcher, is one of the people who spent hours inside the restricted area, and in audio obtained by CNN, Hall later described what he did.
I'm the guy that chartered the jet to go down to Coffee County to have them inspect all of those computers, and I've heard zero. Okay? I went down there, we scanned every freaking ballot.
So my question to you, first of all, the breach itself is illegal. So those individuals need to face charges for it, and they are facing charges for it. The other thing is, as far as I see at the moment, it's kind of unclear whether Trump specifically engaged in that, like if he was part of that plan to breach those machines. So that needs to be proven through this trial if they're going to implicate Trump in this element of the indictment. The other thing is, look, just playing devil's advocate, would you breach the voting machines if you genuinely did not believe that there was voter fraud taking place?
Yeah, so, okay, there's two interesting points there. Number one, Anna's totally right. Trump's connection to breaking into the voting machines has not been established publicly yet. So we'll see if she's got the goods on that, and I genuinely don't know, okay? And partly because of what Anna's saying, which is the logic of it is, why would Trump bother to breach machines when he knows he didn't freaking win? And maybe he thought if we breach the machines, then we jerry-rig it to make it seem like it was rigged, right? And so that's entirely possible. So let's see if they've got evidence of that. And then, why did they choose Coffee County? It's already a heavily Trump area. I mean, that's a very unlikely place for Biden to do cheating. It's because they had access to it, right? They can't go down in the middle of Atlanta and go, let me breach the voting systems here and give me one of your machines. It's not gonna work. They go down to Coffee County and that clown ass lady goes, oh yeah, come on in. And she goes in with them and says, I wasn't there. Look, I know that in the political world for MAGA, there is no reality. But in the real world, there is a reality. So when you show up on a tape, we all can see you, right?
Right. Also, but let's keep it real. So Coffee County uses the Dominion voting machines, right?
Yeah.
And the area overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump. So am I to believe that the voting machines worked perfectly fine in Coffee County, but in the areas of Georgia where Biden won over Trump, they somehow malfunctioned and gave Biden an edge?
Yeah, that's part of why they would go into Coffee County to check the machines, because if you were going to actually cheat, you wouldn't just cheat in the areas that are more likely to vote for you. You cheat more broadly. You take a couple of votes from each place, et cetera, presumably. I don't know, I'm not in the cheating business like the Republicans are. Anyways, okay, but by the way, let's also note, they tried it in a small town and found out. Okay, so, and Coffee County is very small, but look, for the MAGA guys, if you're like, oh, they're just inspecting the machine. Oh, so you don't mind? Do you mind if Democrats then breach all of these secure areas in the voting booths in the next election?
Can you guys imagine?
They're just inspecting the machine, so I'm sure you don't mind Biden and his team doing it, right?
By the way, if Democrats did that, we'd be the first to cover it and condemn them for doing it.
100%.
Because guess what matters more than gross partisan politics? Our democracy. And saving and protecting our electoral process. That's way more important to me than any Democrat, anything else that's happening right now in the world of partisan politics. But I gotta give you one more detail, Cenk, because there is one slim piece of evidence that we know about so far tying Donald Trump to the Coffee County incident. So CNN reported that last year, a former Trump official testified under oath to the House January 6th Select Committee that plans to access voting systems in Georgia were discussed in meetings at the White House, including during an Oval Office meeting on December 18th of 2020 that included Trump.
I wonder if he'll do the defense of, yeah, but that document was longer than 2 pages and didn't have my name on it or pictures, so obviously I didn't read it. That's usually, no, so we'll see what kind of evidence they have about that meeting and whether Trump participated. It's in the Oval Office, presumably. And how much did he participate? Did he order them to break into the machine? Did he not know, or is this the answer somewhere in the middle? Guys, another reason why this trial is so important is that you're gonna have Republican, not Democrats, Republican after Republican after Republican testifying against Donald Trump. And they're gonna say, hey, I've been a lifelong Republican, I did this, this, and this. Here's how much I despise the Democrats, here's et cetera. But I believe in the United States Constitution and they wanted me to cheat and I wouldn't cheat. Look, my spidey sense says that we've reached a tipping point. And I know that, again, mainstream media has said that from day one. They thought the walls were closing in when there were no walls to begin with. But now, 4 indictments in, and this is a stunning fact. He now faces, I think, 93 counts over the 4 cases combined, 912 years behind bars.
I mean, come on.
Okay, so look, he's likely not going to spend 1 day behind bars. Best case scenario is house arrest at Mar-a-Lago. But this is a stunning number of crimes to commit. And I know they all think, oh, no, this is because he's being targeted and persecuted. And it's a brilliant trick on his part to say like, oh, of course, that everything I do wrong doesn't count because the bad guys are coming to get me, right? But in reality, MAGA, you picked a clown who loaded all of these different guns and handed it to your enemies, not just his enemies, but your enemies. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna break this crime. I'm gonna take home top secret nuclear documents for no goddamn reason. Here's a loaded gun, take it.
More importantly, he just refused to give them back when he had ample opportunities to do so.
Why not give it back, you moron of morons? You would have gotten away with it completely if you just gave it back.
Right.
If I was MAGA, I would be livid with how stupid he is, because he's your leader and he set you guys up to fail. Now, even if he wins the primary, and he's still in great shape to win the primary, man, this is devastating stuff. You just lost a giant chunk of independence. This isn't around the edges now, this is a tsunami. And you can deny reality all you want, like that lady in the voting area, okay? But at the end of the day, numbers are numbers and these are real. And when independents, you could beat Joe Biden so easy if you ask me. And I know that the right wingers agree, right? But the one guy who's gonna blow it for you is Donald Trump.
True.
And it's all his fault. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships.
You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.